is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and Danielle Allentuck live on a Saturday night with breaking news. And that is that Tyler O'Neill, veteran outfielder, has agreed to a 3-year deal with the Baltimore Orioles. We're going to break it all down from every angle. Danielle, I think if nothing else, this podcast will prove that we have nothing better to do with our lives at 8:15 p.m. on a Saturday night than talk about the Baltimore Orioles one day before we fly to winter meetings in Dallas.
It's true. They're lucky we were packing and getting ready to go to Texas tomorrow morning. So it was good timing.
It was perfect timing. Nobody definitely had anything better to do at this point, like, eating dinner, relaxing, watching college football. Nope. It's time for breaking news. Mike Elias decided he's not going to wait for the winter meetings. He's going to get some work done early. And this is about as good a fit as you can imagine for an Orioles team that is in need of a right-handed hitter. They go out and get one of the best ones on the market. Tyler O'Neill, 30 years old, 3-year, $49.5 million deal. It was initially reported by John Heyman and then confirmed by our own Andy Koska. $16.5 million a year would come in just below Zach Eflin's $18 million for the 2025 season, but it would be the most that Mike Elias has ever handed out to a free agent in Baltimore, even if he opts out after the 2025 season, because there is an opt-out in this contract, which would make him a free agent after just 1 year. Danielle, what is your thinking with the contract? And were you as surprised as I was that the Orioles are potentially ready to be making a commitment close to $50 million?
I mean, it shows it's a new era. They've been talking about how they're willing to front the money and, get the players that they need. And, by getting the players, that means you're going to have to spend the money. So they're doing just that. They're kind of putting the money where their mouth has been, all offseason. The opt-outs kind of intrigue me a little bit because it does give everybody an out after 1 year, which wouldn't make it that multi-year deal that they've been avoiding for so long. But, the Orioles had a need. They needed a right-handed hitter, and they ran out and got one. If this was the deal, they needed to get it. Good for them for being willing to make that deal and make it happen.
Yeah, and we had heard from Mike Elias that this ownership group had been very supportive, but he was always careful to put boundaries around just how much this payroll would increase next season. And this does not dramatically increase next year's payroll, adding $16.5 million to the payroll for one
It essentially
season.
Replaces Corbin Burns' contract from last year.
Exactly. So, it's not a massive step up for just the 1 year, but if he ends up sticking around for all 3 years, that turns into a pretty sizable deal, and by far the most sizable that Mike Elias has ever given to a free agent. In terms of what Tyler O'Neill is, he's a .241 hitter from last year with the Boston Red Sox, a .336 on base, an .847 OPS, and he hit 31 homers in 113 games. Now, his career has been kind of a roller coaster. Had an incredible 2021 season with St. Louis where he had over 6 WAR, according to Baseball Reference, OPS over 900, 8th in MVP voting, and then a bunch of injuries and some mediocre play in 2022 and 2023, only 168 games combined between those two seasons. Almost to the day a year ago, he gets traded to the Boston Red Sox for a pair of players, and he really revived his career at the perfect time. He got everyday playing time. He missed some time with injury, but he was in there for 113 games. He hit 31 homers, and he was a crucial part of a Boston Red Sox lineup last year that I think, according to some, overperformed.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about his injury past. We were kind of saying, name the body part, he's had an injury to it over his career.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of Santanera like that, where, he's had a ton of careers. And then last year, he was able to kind of put the pieces together and spend most of the season on the field. He had a couple minor injuries, but 113 games was the most he had played since 2021. So he's an intriguing ad. It definitely means Santanera is more than likely not coming back. But, they needed that right-handed hitter, and they got it with him. I like the 31 home runs from last year, another power hitter in that lineup. The strikeout numbers, are pretty high, but he fits in well with his Orioles lineup because that's kind of how the rest of the lineup rolls right now.
Yeah, his StatCast page is kind of wild if you have a chance to look at it. It's a mix of bright red and bright blue. And the bright red is the expected slugging percentage. It's the barrel percentage. It's the hard hit percentage. It's the walk percentage. He's getting on base and he's making hard contact, but he is whiffing a lot. He's
Yeah.
striking out a good amount. And the Orioles have shown they don't really care too much about the strikeout percentage. The big thing to me is that walk percentage, because his OBP, despite the fact that he hit 13 fewer homers than Anthony Santander last year, his on base percentage was 30 points higher.
Yeah.
Santander had one of the lowest on base percentages for a guy who hit that many homers, 44 homers. They need guys who can get on base. And we
And it's a goal of the Orioles to walk more,
yeah.
and he
Yeah.
fits that profile.
Yeah, they bring in Cody Ashe or promote him this offseason after their two hitting coaches leave, and they have made it a point that they want to walk more. And Anthony Santander, frankly, didn't get on base a whole lot despite the incredible power that he brought.
Yeah, so he could fit right in there. He also is, a leader for this clubhouse. And if you're losing Santander, you got to be able to replace that somewhere. That's a big part of this as well. In division, which is always useful. I think this was a good ad, and you have to wonder if the left field wall coming in, how much
Yeah.
that is going to help, and how much that played into the signing. I look forward to asking Mike Elias next week about that, if they would have been able to get this deal done in the past, or if that was something new. Because of the wall. But I'm also intrigued, is he going to be a starter? Is he going to platoon maybe with Heston Kjerstad? Like, how is he going to end up fitting into this lineup?
Yeah, you have Heston Kjerstad, who is poised to play more games in 2025. Presumably has a healthier season, more productive season after he flashed at times last year. You bring back Ryan O'Hearn, who can play in the outfield, but ideally he's really more of a designated hitter. But this team so desperately needed a right-handed hitter, because when Jordan Westburg went down, when Ramon Arias went down, when Ryan Mountcastle went down in the second half of last year, Danielle, we saw the lineup suffer incredible lows. Their power was gone. They had nobody to get on base. They had nobody hitting for average. And by the time they got to the playoffs, you got those guys back, but they weren't fully themselves. And you really saw this lineup suffer when it mattered most.
And fans have fully realized it. We fully realized that this is a manager who loves matchups. He loves to be able to switch players in and out, and he was willing to do it, even if players of lower caliber level, just to get that right-handed bat in there. So having a guy like him on the bench, even if he's not starting every night, is only going to make this team that much better.
Yeah. The only player I think that could have fit better in Baltimore that was a free agent was Teoscar Hernandez.
Or
He would have been
Anthony Santander, but
or Anthony Santander. But even Santander, that on base percentage being as low as it was certainly a concern. I think at this point we can reasonably say, though, like you said, Danielle, that Santander is probably going to be finding a new team this winter.
I just can't imagine why at this point they would feel the need to give him the money. They have their right-handed hitter. I feel like they've kind of checked off the outfield and they're going to move on to the next thing, which is a starting pitcher, a reliever, and a backup catcher. So just kind of knowing how the Orioles think, it doesn't feel like they are going to still be seeking a right-handed outfielder.
Yeah, and guys who hit 44 homers get paid, and there's a good chance that Santander will end up with a longer-term contract with more money, more guaranteed money than what Tyler O'Neill just got from the Orioles. So Teoscar Hernandez has not yet been signed. Anthony Santander has not yet been signed. I'm sure the Orioles checked in with both of their markets, but they decided, let's get something done earlier. We have the guy at this price point. We feel like he's the best fit. So they move on potentially from Anthony Santander, assuming he signs with another team. And maybe Teoscar Hernandez was going to be a little bit out of their price point. I think if you're looking for a happy medium for production and for price point, Tyler O'Neill is about as good as you can get.
Yeah, it wasn't, a cheap ad. It wasn't like their trade deadline acquisitions with Eloy and Austin Slater, where they just kind of went out and got, the cheapest option to fill that role. They did go out and spend money on an experienced player who had the track record to provide for them. So, in that case, it was a good move. I think he's a good fit for them. I think that they could still, use another bat probably, but it's not the highest priority. But, they checked something off early. This is much earlier than they've made signings in years past.
Yeah. Tyler O'Neill comes, by the way, to Baltimore as a two-time Gold Glove winner. So he has some defensive pedigree, but I'm not sure that the Orioles are going to be, having another Gold Glove caliber season from Tyler O'Neill, because according to StatCast, his defensive metrics have dipped just a little bit, which is to be expected as he ages. He's entering his age 30 season now, and if he lives out the contract with Baltimore, He'll be 33 by the time he leaves, but that's, the 33-year-old outfielder that is not at all too old to be still providing some kind of value, especially in the right field at Baltimore. So they still have Colton Cowser that they can run out there in left and in center. Cedric Mullins, obviously, in center, but not having an all lefty outfield was going to be a huge priority for this team. And having somebody who can go back and forth with Kerstad and maybe even Ryan O'Hearn is definitely something that Mike Elias can now check off his list.
And even, with Cowser, he did finish second in voting for Rookie of the Year, but he still was incredibly inconsistent. And last year probably could have benefited from a couple extra days on the bench. So, with him and with Heston Kjerstad, two guys who are still figuring out, major league life and playing consistently at this level. Heston Kjerstad has not played a full season yet. He had that concussion last year that kept him out for a long time. So both of those guys could use, that added security of having a guy like Tyler O'Neill who can go in for a couple of days and give them that break.
Yeah. And you mentioned the fact that Tyler O'Neill's also going from one AL East team to another. So you're robbing from another divisional opponent. We're still waiting to see what the Juan Soto saga, how that is going to play out. Yeah. And you have two teams in the division, from everything we've heard, that are in on Juan Soto.
Great.
I also do wonder if you're going to see Santander go to one of the two divisional foes here.
You got Yankees, Red Sox, and Blue Jays in on
and
Soto.
Blue Jays. True. Yeah. So maybe Anthony Santander is one of these teams' backup plans. What if Santander stays in the division, but just not with the Orioles?
Yeah, you haven't heard much about him, and you just have to think that as soon as Soto signs, which I think most people are expecting to happen at the winter meetings next week, that Santander is the next guy. He's the next best outfielder. And you're exactly right. These 5 teams who are in on Soto, they'll probably have Santander right there, ready to contact him as soon as somebody claims Soto.
Yeah. All right. If you're Mike Elias, Danielle, what is next on your to-do list? Maybe something that you could get done at winter meetings, but something that absolutely needs to get done over the next 2 months.
Well, they need a pitcher, a starter, a reliever. I think they need both. They need to get another catcher. None of their minor league catchers are kind of at the point of being ready to be Adley's backup yet. But I think pitchers probably take precedent over your catcher. So that would be my number one priority. I would not necessarily expect Mike Elias to get it done next week. He has said that he doesn't have a lot of urgency at winter meetings. He doesn't feel a need to absolutely get all his business done next week. But I could also see him kind of orchestrating a trade to get some of those things and maybe setting up something like he did with the Zach Eflin trade last year and getting a pitcher where they have somebody under control for a couple of years without having to spend that mega money, because these pitchers are going for a lot of money right now, and they just spent money on Tyler O'Neill. Do you see them doing that again with another starting pitcher? It kind of remains to be seen. I think it's more likely that they will make a trade for one.
Yeah, I mean the pitcher market is pretty out of control at this point. After we saw, I think the one that shocked the most was Luis Severino going to the Sacramento Athletics.
Yeah, look how much money they were willing to spend.
Yeah, and once that deal came across my timeline, I had concerns that are the Orioles going to maybe be outspent this offseason by the Athletics, which is an absurd thing to say, but this signing in Tyler O'Neill does at least give you hope that Mike Elias maybe has more flexibility with the payroll than he did in years past. Obviously, it doesn't break the bank, but it is at least a good sign that, hey, they're willing to spend, and he has the green light from ownership to do so.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't break the bank, but for the Orioles, it kind of does. Under John Angelos, you never would have seen this in the end of his tenure, those last couple of years. So it is the biggest contract Mike Elias has given out. So that is noteworthy. It does show a sign, even if it's not, for the Yankees, if this is like the bottom of their payroll, it's not a big deal to them. But for the Orioles, it does show that changing the course and that they are willing to do that.
Right. And the Orioles obviously can bring back Corbin Burns if they feel like shelling out $200+ million. But there are plenty of other guys that are still out there and available. Nathan Eovaldi, I think, might make for a good fit in Baltimore. Jack Flaherty, that's not happening. Michael Lorenzen could add some depth to their rotation. Max Fried, obviously, is one of the best pitchers out there on the market. Sean Manaea as well. Andrew Heaney. So there's still plenty of guys out there that the Orioles could go and get. And starting pitching is definitely, if it's not the next item on Mike Elias's to-do list, it's got to be the top one, because that's got to be the number one concern here.
I remember last year, he didn't make his starting pitching move until February. So there is plenty of time to get this done. That's when they acquired Corbin Burns from the Brewers. I think it was like February 1st or 2nd. So not everything has to get done right now. The trade market does typically heat up a little bit later.
Yeah. Well, we have plenty more to talk about later on this week because in just a few hours, I'm going to be hopping on a flight to Dallas. Danielle, you'll meet me there, and we will have another show for you later on this week and plenty of coverage on the BaltimoreBanner.com where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months. At @D_Allentuck is Danielle's Twitter handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff for the Banner Baseball Show. Write us a nice 5-star review. We are back for off-season coverage, and we will keep you updated with all breaking news. For Danielle Allentuck, I'm Paul Mancano.